Have you ever found yourself exploding with anger before you even realized what was happening? That split second where your emotions seized control, your heart raced, and words flew out of your mouth that you instantly regretted? If you're nodding right now, you're not alone in this struggle for emotional control. From the moment we take our first breath, society begins programming us to be reactive beings. We're conditioned to smile when we want to scream, to comply when every fiber of our being burns for rebellion, and to desperately seek approval when our instincts tell us to stand firm. This psychological conditioning runs so deep that most people spend their entire lives as emotional prisoners, unconsciously dancing to the rhythm of other people's expectations and provocations. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? Someone says something that triggers you, and before you know it, you're defending yourself, explaining your position, or lashing out in anger. In that crucial moment, you've unknowingly handed over your power to another person. You've surrendered control of your mental state, your actions, and ultimately, your destiny. The ancient political philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli understood this principle better than perhaps anyone in history. He once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." What he meant was that your mind is your most powerful weapon, but if it's not properly disciplined and sharpened, it becomes dangerous to the one wielding it. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. In today's world, where outrage has become currency and emotional reactions are harvested like crops, the person who masters their internal state holds an almost supernatural advantage. While others flinch at harsh words, crumble under pressure, and expose their vulnerabilities with every emotional outburst, the person who has learned to respond rather than react moves through life with an entirely different kind of power. This isn't about becoming emotionless or cold. It's about developing what I call strategic emotional intelligence, the ability to feel everything but be controlled by nothing. It's about transforming from someone who can be easily provoked and manipulated into someone who chooses their responses with surgical precision. The truth is, if you can be provoked, you can be controlled. Every time you react emotionally to someone's words or actions, you're essentially telling them exactly which buttons to push to get the response they want from you. You become predictable, manageable, and ultimately powerless. If these psychological insights resonated with you, hit that subscribe button to join others committed to mastering emotional control and strategic thinking. But there's a better way to navigate life's challenges, and it begins with a profound mindset transformation. The foundation of this change lies in what I call strategic emotional intelligence, a rare skill that separates true leaders from those who merely react to their environment. This intelligence isn't about suppressing your feelings or becoming a cold, calculating machine. Rather, it's about developing the capacity to experience emotions fully while maintaining complete sovereignty over how you express them. Think about the last time someone pushed your buttons. In that moment of reactivity, you weren't just showing emotion. You were revealing your psychological blueprint, your triggers, your vulnerabilities. Every emotional outburst is essentially a map you're handing to others, showing them exactly how to manipulate you in the future. The more predictable your reactions become, the easier you are to manage and ultimately to control. Now, I want to go even deeper into this hidden truth about power dynamics. Throughout history, from ancient emperors to modern business titans, those who wielded true influence understood a fundamental principle. Power isn't hot and explosive, it's cold, calculated, and strategic. It's the crucial difference between holding the leash and wearing the collar yourself. The real journey toward emotional mastery begins when you realize that in any exchange, the person who maintains their composure while others lose theirs automatically assumes control of the situation. While they're busy exposing their weaknesses through emotional volatility, you're gathering invaluable data about their pressure points, their insecurities, their strategies. Behind the scenes of every powerful decision-maker's success is this ability to create space between stimulus and response, a psychological buffer zone, where impulse gets transformed into strategy. This isn't a skill we're born with, it's a discipline developed through conscious practice and relentless self-awareness. The impact of this transformation extends far beyond just winning arguments. When you master the art of responding rather than reacting, you begin noticing subtle opportunities and patterns that were previously invisible to you. Your decisions improve because they're no longer clouded by emotional impulse. Your relationships transform because you're operating from a place of strategic clarity rather than reactive chaos. What's fascinating about this journey is how it ripples through every aspect of your existence. The same principles that help you remain composed during a heated business negotiation will serve you equally well during family conflicts, social media provocations, or personal setbacks. This isn't just a technique, it's a complete revision of how you engage with the world. Write in the comments, I choose control over chaos, if you're starting to see how this principle could transform your own approach to challenging situations. Look around at the world today, and you'll see a fascinating evolutionary paradox at play. We're born with reactive programming hardwired into our brains. It's primal, instinctive, and served a critical purpose for our ancestors. When our early human predecessors heard a twig snap in the forest, that instant reaction, the surge of adrenaline, the quickened heartbeat, the immediate fight-or-flight response meant the difference between survival and death. But here's the revelation that changes everything. We're no longer navigating primitive dangers, yet most people still operate from this ancient programming. They're barking at digital shadows on their screens, launching into defensive tirades over email, and treating minor workplace disagreements like existential threats. We're using Stone Age emotional hardware to navigate a digital age reality, and the disconnection is profound. This brings us to what I call the law of cold reaction, a principle that separates true masters of influence from those who remain trapped in reactivity. The individuals who genuinely rise above the masses understand a counterintuitive truth. The colder your response becomes, the greater your power grows. This isn't advocating for emotional detachment or coldness toward others. Rather, it's about developing a fundamentally different relationship with your internal landscape. The transformation happens when you shift from being the actor in your emotional drama to becoming its director. Most people live at the mercy of their feelings. They experience anger and immediately express it, feel fear and instantly retreat, encounter criticism and automatically defend. Their emotional experiences and expressions are inseparable, creating a predictable pattern that others can easily manipulate. Behind the scenes of every truly influential person is a profound mindset shift regarding emotions themselves. A true strategist sees emotion not as gospel truth that must be honored and expressed, but as valuable data, a tool to be understood, harnessed, and channeled productively. They recognize that emotions provide critical information about situations, but that information requires interpretation rather than immediate action. The hidden truth that most never discover is this: in any arena where power dynamics are at play, whether a boardroom, negotiation, family conflict, or casual conversation, the first person to lose their emotional composure has already surrendered control of the situation. Their impulsivity becomes their vulnerability. Their reactivity becomes their weakness. And in life's complex game of influence, control over yourself and your responses isn't just important, it's everything. When you begin viewing your emotional reactions as strategic choices rather than inevitable responses, you unlock a level of personal sovereignty few ever experience. You start moving through challenging situations with a clarity and precision that seems almost supernatural to those still trapped in reactivity. Drop "I'm mastering my responses" in the comments if you're beginning to see how this principle could fundamentally transform your approach to difficult situations and confrontations. When you begin mastering this level of emotional sovereignty, something remarkable happens in how others perceive and respond to you. There's a subtle yet profound transformation in your presence that people can sense, even if they can't quite articulate what they're experiencing. There's something simultaneously unsettling, yet strangely magnetic, about someone who doesn't flinch when challenged, doesn't get rattled under pressure, and responds with deliberate precision rather than impulsive reactivity. This presence isn't something you can fake or perform. It radiates authentically from a genuine inner discipline that others instinctively recognize. They may not understand the mechanics behind your composure, but they feel the weight of it. This creates a gravitational pull that shifts the entire dynamic of your interactions. Subscribe now to continue your journey toward emotional mastery and access more advanced psychological strategies that most will never discover. The journey toward this kind of presence requires a fundamental revolution in how you perceive challenging situations themselves. Most people view conflict as something inherently negative, an uncomfortable experience to be avoided at all costs. But those who develop true psychological mastery undergo a paradigm shift. They begin seeing every confrontation, every provocation, every attempt to trigger an emotional response as pure, valuable information. This revelation completely alters your relationship with difficult encounters. When someone criticizes you harshly, instead of feeling wounded and defensive, you become curious. What does this reveal about their insecurities? What buttons are they trying to push? What strategy are they employing? Every attempt to provoke you becomes a window into the other person's psychological landscape. And in that moment, you gain the ultimate advantage. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies another counterintuitive truth that most people never discover. In the complex ecology of human interaction, there exists a fascinating inverse relationship between volume and actual power. The loudest voice in the room is almost always coming from the weakest position. When someone feels the need to shout, to dominate conversations with their voice, to verbally steamroll others, they're not displaying strength. They're broadcasting deep-seated insecurity. The person who must raise their voice has already lost the war of perception before the battle has even begun. It's a desperate attempt to command attention and authority because they lack the presence to naturally draw it. True, influence doesn't announce itself with volume. It establishes itself through composed clarity and strategic precision. The most powerful players in any situation operate differently. They move with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. They understand that shouting reveals weakness, while measured responses demonstrate genuine control. They know that the person who speaks softly but carries immense conviction often wields more actual influence than those frantically trying to prove their importance through volume alone. Drop "quiet strength speaks volumes" in the comments if you're beginning to recognize this pattern in your own experiences with truly influential people versus those who merely want to appear important. There's a reason the most powerful players in any arena operate with a different rhythm than those around them. They've discovered the strategic advantage of silence, of watching, absorbing, and collecting information while others frantically expose themselves through emotional outbursts. This approach has an almost predatory quality to it, but not in a malicious way. It's more like a chess grandmaster who patiently studies the board, noting patterns and weaknesses, while their opponent impulsively moves pieces without any coherent strategy. This dynamic creates an information asymmetry that becomes pure leverage. When you react emotionally to provocations, you're essentially bleeding valuable data about yourself, your insecurities, your pressure points, your psychological patterns, all of which can be mapped and exploited later. Every time you lose composure, you're handing over a piece of your blueprint to anyone observing closely enough. But when you develop the discipline to respond rather than react, you create something invaluable in any negotiation or confrontation: mystery. And mystery, as any skilled negotiator or strategist knows, is one of the most powerful forms of psychological leverage. When others can't predict your responses or read your internal state, you gain an almost supernatural advantage in any interaction. Now, I want to go even deeper into the actual mechanics of this transformation. The shift from reactivity to strategic response isn't just conceptual. It's a practical discipline with specific steps. Instead of immediately expressing whatever emotion arises, you develop the capacity to feel the emotion fully, but internally. You experience it as data rather than as a command to act. Like a scientist examining an interesting specimen, you study the feeling, noting its quality, its intensity, what triggered it, what it reveals about the situation and your own patterns. This creates a crucial buffer zone between stimulus and response, a space of freedom where conscious choice becomes possible. In that space, you can ask powerful questions. What does this emotional reaction tell me about my own vulnerabilities? What does it reveal about the other person's strategy? What would be the most effective response in this moment rather than the most emotionally satisfying one? The revelation behind this approach is that emotional discipline isn't about suppression or denial. It's about developing a different relationship with your internal landscape, one where emotions inform your decisions rather than dictating them. You move from being a passenger in your emotional vehicle to becoming its driver, consciously choosing when to accelerate, when to brake, and which direction to steer. This mindset revolution completely transforms how you navigate challenging interactions. Rather than being pulled into every emotional current that flows through you, you develop the capacity to witness your feelings with clarity while maintaining strategic control over your responses. This doesn't mean becoming cold or mechanical. It means achieving a level of emotional sovereignty that few people ever develop. Right? I'm becoming the observer, not the reactor, in the comments. If you're beginning to recognize how this approach could transform your relationship with your own emotional triggers and responses. One of the most profound misunderstandings about the journey toward emotional intelligence is the perception of restraint as weakness. When you choose not to fire back immediately after being provoked, people often mistake your composure for passivity or even cowardice. This fundamental misreading reveals how deeply our culture has internalized reactivity as strength. But there's a crucial distinction that changes everything. You're not being passive, you're being patient. And in the intricate dance of human psychology, strategic patience wields enormous power that immediate reactivity can never access. Consider this revelation through a different lens. In nature, predators don't chase every potential prey that crosses their path. They wait, observe, conserve energy, and strike only when conditions optimize their chance of success. This isn't indecision, it's supreme tactical intelligence. The same principle applies to human interaction. The most successful leaders, negotiators, and influencers throughout history share this common trait. They never rush their responses out of emotional urgency. Instead, they wait for the perfect moment to make their move. They develop an almost supernatural awareness of timing, watching for when their counterpart becomes emotionally compromised, overextended, or caught off guard. They recognize that the effectiveness of any response depends as much on when it's delivered as what it contains. This strategic patience creates a completely different relationship with time itself. While others feel compelled to respond instantly to every stimulus, the disciplined mind sees time as an ally rather than an enemy. The transformation this creates in your decision-making process is remarkable. When you're not constantly reacting to external circumstances, defending, explaining, justifying, or attacking, you gain something invaluable: mental space. In that space, patterns become visible that remain completely hidden to those trapped in reactivity. Opportunities reveal themselves that others miss entirely. Solutions emerge naturally that never would have surfaced amid emotional turbulence. Behind the scenes of every person who seems unnaturally calm during crisis or conflict is someone who has done the inner work to master their impulses. They've developed the capacity to witness their emotional responses without being controlled by them. They've trained themselves to pause between stimulus and response, not to suppress their feelings, but to process them consciously before deciding how to act. This mindset revolution completely transforms how you navigate challenging situations. Instead of being swept along by every emotional current that flows through you, you develop the ability to stand firm while the storm passes, maintaining your center of gravity regardless of external pressure. This creates a form of psychological sovereignty that few people ever experience. The freedom to choose your responses rather than having them chosen for you by unconscious programming or external manipulation. Type "I'm cultivating strategic patience" in the comments if you're beginning to recognize how this approach could transform your effectiveness in handling difficult situations and conversations. Now, I want to go even deeper into one of the most powerful weapons in psychological warfare, something so simple yet devastatingly effective that most people completely overlook it: strategic silence. Picture this scenario. Someone is raging at you, desperately trying to provoke a reaction, hurling accusations or insults, and you respond with nothing but calm silence or perhaps just a slight composed smile. What happens in that moment is profound psychological alchemy. They came armed and ready for resistance, for defensiveness, anger, or emotional reciprocity. Instead, they encounter something completely unexpected: a wall of composed stillness that reflects their own chaos back at them. This creates a fascinating disruption in their psychological expectations. The emotional energy they've generated has nowhere to go, no target to hit, no resistance to push against. It simply rebounds, forcing them to confront their own intensity without the satisfaction of seeing it affect you. The transformation this creates in the dynamic between you is immediate and powerful. Without realizing it, they've surrendered control of the interaction to you. Their emotional outburst, meant to dominate the situation, has instead revealed their vulnerabilities, while you've exposed none of yours. This isn't a technique of disengagement. It's one of the highest forms of strategic engagement possible. Behind the scenes of this approach is a revelation about human psychology that most people never discover. Most individuals are profoundly uncomfortable with silence. It creates an empty space that they feel compelled to fill, often with their own revelations, fears, strategies, and underlying motivations. When faced with your composed silence, they'll keep talking, keep pushing, keep revealing their hand, while you simply observe and gather intelligence. It's almost like watching someone have an argument with themselves while you stand as the calm witness to their internal struggle. Every word they speak in the face of your silence becomes valuable data that you can use later. Their assumptions, their insecurities, their tactics, all laid bare simply because you refuse to respond reactively. This journey toward emotional mastery isn't just about winning individual confrontations, it's about building what I call an invisible fortress around your psychological sovereignty. Every single time you choose not to react emotionally, every time you maintain your composure in the face of provocation, you're constructing another layer of psychological armor around yourself. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected from your humanity. It's about developing what ancient philosophers might have called higher logic, a way of operating that transcends the emotional spikes and valleys that control most people's decisions and behaviors. With each provocation you withstand without reaction, your invisible fortress grows stronger, your emotional sovereignty more complete, your psychological advantage more pronounced. Comment: I'm building my invisible fortress. If you're starting to see how this approach to strategic silence could completely transform how others perceive and respond to you in challenging situations. There's a darker discipline at work within this practice of emotional mastery, a cold flame that burns within controlled silence. While most people remain slaves to their immediate emotional impulses, reacting automatically to whatever stimulus appears before them, those who develop this skill operate from an entirely different level of consciousness. Their inner landscape becomes a strategic command center rather than an emotional battlefield. Their responses emerge not from compulsion, but from calculation, not from reactivity, but from strategy. This transformation creates a profound shift in how you engage with challenging situations. You begin operating like a chess grandmaster who sees 5 moves ahead while others are focused solely on their next play. Your decisions emerge from a place of strategic foresight rather than emotional urgency. Your timing becomes impeccable because you're no longer trapped in the tyranny of immediate response. Speaking of timing, there's a hidden truth about influence that most people never discover. Real power doesn't come from speed or immediate reaction. It comes from impeccable timing, from knowing precisely when to move, speak, or remain silent. The person who controls when things happen, who sets the pace of conversations and confrontations, holds tremendous psychological advantage over those who feel compelled to respond instantly to every stimulus. Think about the most skilled negotiators, the most effective leaders, the people who seem to effortlessly navigate complex social and professional situations. They all understand this principle intuitively. The timing of an intervention often matters more than its content. A perfect response delivered at the wrong moment loses much of its impact, while even a simple word or gesture delivered at precisely the right time can completely shift the trajectory of a situation. Behind the scenes of every master strategist is this fundamental understanding. The strategist always waits, not because they're paralyzed by indecision or fear, but because they're calculating, storing information, reading the room, and waiting for the optimal moment to make their move. This approach requires a complete mindset revolution about what patience actually represents. In a culture obsessed with immediate gratification and instant responses, patience has been misinterpreted as weakness or indecision. But true strategic patience is actually one of the highest forms of psychological strength. It requires the discipline to sit with uncertainty, to tolerate the discomfort of not immediately reacting, to trust that a better opportunity will emerge if you simply wait for the right moment. This capacity separates genuine tacticians from those who remain trapped in the cycle of stimulus and immediate response. When you begin implementing this approach in your own life, you'll notice an immediate transformation in how you navigate complex situations. You'll make better decisions because you're no longer making them from a place of emotional urgency. You'll spot opportunities that were previously invisible because you've created the mental space to perceive them. Type "I control the timing" in the comments if you're starting to see how this strategic patience could completely transform your approach to challenging situations and important decisions. This transformation in your approach to emotional mastery reveals a striking contrast between two types of people navigating the world. The average person operates exactly like a match. Instant spark, bright flame for a brief moment, then quickly burning out with nothing substantial left behind. Their reactions are utterly predictable, their emotional energy depletes rapidly, and their impact fades just as quickly as it appeared. But when you develop this deeper level of psychological discipline, you become something entirely different. A fuse. A fuse burns slowly, quietly, with controlled intensity. When it finally reaches its target, the explosion is deliberate, precise, and devastatingly effective. This metaphor perfectly captures the difference between reactive outbursts and strategic responses. While others waste their energy on immediate emotional discharge, you're building pressure, gathering intelligence, and preparing for maximum impact when the moment is right. Now, I want to go even deeper into what Machiavelli understood about human psychology at a level most people never reach. He recognized a hidden truth that has shaped the trajectory of power dynamics throughout history. In the complex dance of human interactions, appearances often matter more than truth itself. When you master the art of strategic delay, you're not just buying time. You're crafting an image of calm dominance that unsettles and influences everyone around you. People witness your composed demeanor during stressful situations and automatically assign you greater competence and authority. They can't help but wonder what lies beneath your unreadable exterior. What knowledge, what power, what strategy you might be concealing behind that composed facade. This perception creates a reality of its own, generating influence that extends far beyond whatever actual advantages you might possess. The revelation behind this approach is that while others mistake your patience for passivity, you're actually engaged in intensive reconnaissance. You're studying behavioral patterns, mapping psychological weaknesses, predicting probable responses, and calculating the most effective intervention points. This level of strategic thinking gives you an almost supernatural advantage in negotiations, conflicts, and complex social dynamics. Nature itself provides us with the perfect metaphor for this mindset shift. Consider how a snake operates when hunting. It doesn't strike when it's angry or feeling threatened. It strikes when the timing creates the highest probability of success. This represents a completely different relationship with action and timing than most humans have developed. Those who act too soon, who can't resist the urge to respond immediately, end up bleeding control and revealing their strategy before they've even seen their opponent's full hand. The journey toward this level of self-mastery requires fundamentally reframing what strength actually looks like. Society has programmed us to believe that immediate response equals power, that quick comebacks demonstrate intelligence, that constant activity shows productivity. But the reality is that delay, when used strategically, becomes a form of psychological warfare that most people don't even recognize is happening. Write, "I am the fuse, not the match," in the comments if you're committed to developing this level of strategic patience and controlled intensity in your own approach to challenging situations. When you implement this strategic approach to delay in your daily interactions, you begin to see a profound shift in how your decisions and relationships unfold. The transformation happens because you've fundamentally reframed what strength actually looks like in human interactions. Our society has programmed most people to believe that immediate response equals power, that the quickest comeback demonstrates intelligence, that instant reaction shows emotional authenticity. But this programming creates a fatal vulnerability in most people's psychological framework. The journey toward true self-mastery requires completely inverting this understanding. What appears as weakness, patience, careful observation, strategic delay actually conceals tremendous power. And what masquerades as strength, immediate reactivity, emotional outbursts, instant comebacks, reveals profound psychological fragility. Now, I want to go even deeper into something fascinating that happens when you master strategic delay and withhold the immediate reactions people have come to expect from you. You create a profound psychological discomfort in others that works entirely in your favor. Most people in modern society have become so accustomed to instant responses, immediate feedback, and constant emotional validation that when you deny them this comfort, something remarkable happens. They begin to unravel. This discomfort isn't accidental. It's a feature, not a bug of the strategic approach. People become anxious and restless when they can't predict or control your responses. They need your reaction to feel psychologically stable, to confirm their impact on you, to validate their own emotional state. When you refuse to provide this emotional fuel, their internal equilibrium gets disrupted, and paradoxically, their panic becomes your control mechanism. The revelation this creates extends far beyond simple power. Dynamics. It unveils the hidden truth about emotional detachment, something that most people completely misunderstand. Real emotional detachment isn't about becoming numb or shutting down your capacity to feel. It's about developing mastery over your emotional responses so that your emotions obey you rather than controlling you like a puppet master pulling strings. While most people live as emotional puppets dancing to whatever tune their feelings play, a truly disciplined mind learns to watch chaos unfold without stepping into the storm. You can observe anger, sadness, excitement, or fear moving through your system like weather patterns, acknowledging their presence without being swept away by their intensity. This level of emotional sovereignty becomes your greatest asset in navigating complex relationships and challenging decisions. Behind the scenes of this journey lies a crucial revelation about how manipulation actually works in human interactions. Every control system, throughout history, has used emotion as its primary leash: guilt to make you comply, fear to keep you small, anger to make you reactive, shame to diminish your confidence, and even hope to keep you dependent on external validation. Drop "I control my emotions, they don't control me" in the comments if you're beginning to see how this principle of emotional sovereignty could completely transform your approach to life's challenges and relationships. These emotional reactions aren't just natural. Feelings arising spontaneously within you. They're often weapons being used against you in ways you've never consciously recognized. When you examine the structure of every control system throughout history, you'll discover they all use emotion as their primary leash. Guilt to make you comply with social expectations, fear to keep you small and manageable, anger to make you reactive and predictable, shame to diminish your confidence and independence. Even hope is weaponized to keep you dependent on external validation and approval. The revelation here transforms how you perceive your emotional reactions. When you respond blindly to these triggers without examining their source or purpose, you're not operating as a free individual making conscious choices. You've become programmable, predictable, controllable. The person or system that can consistently trigger specific emotional responses in you essentially owns your decision-making process. Even though you believe you're acting from your own will, the truth is much darker. Your buttons are being pushed by forces you haven't yet learned to recognize. Now, I want to go even deeper into one of Machiavelli's most profound insights about human psychology. He understood something that most people never grasp. Emotion is simultaneously your greatest vulnerability and your most powerful weapon, depending on how you choose to wield it. This duality creates a fundamental choice point in your journey toward psychological mastery. Machiavelli himself never trusted his own emotions to guide important decisions, yet he became a master at exploiting emotional reactions in others, while keeping his own feelings buried beneath layers of strategic calculation. The transformation this creates in your decision-making process is remarkable. Instead of feeling your way through life like most people do, you begin thinking your way through complex situations. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless or cold. It means rising above the emotional current that sweeps most people along without their conscious awareness. You start operating from a higher level of consciousness where emotion becomes data rather than directive. You recognize when someone is attempting to manipulate you through guilt, fear, or shame, and instead of responding automatically, you analyze their strategy. You notice when systems are designed to keep you emotionally reactive rather than strategically responsive. You develop the capacity to use emotional displays strategically when beneficial, while maintaining complete inner composure. This journey toward emotional sovereignty creates a fundamental shift in how others perceive and respond to you. People sense that their usual manipulation tactics don't work on you anymore, that you've somehow risen above the emotional currents that control most people's behaviors and decisions. This creates both respect and a certain kind of healthy fear, not because you're threatening, but because you've become unreadable, unpredictable, and fundamentally uncontrollable through conventional emotional triggers. Type, "I recognize the emotional leashes" in the comments if you're beginning to see how your automatic emotional reactions might be serving someone else's agenda rather than your own conscious choices and strategic interests. Now, I want to go even deeper into the practical application of this psychological mastery. The goal isn't to suppress or eliminate your emotional responses. That's neither healthy nor sustainable. Instead, you learn what I call the art of emotional conversion, transforming raw feeling into strategic advantage. This alchemy of emotion represents perhaps the most sophisticated level of psychological development possible. When anger arises within you, instead of exploding or lashing out, you learn to study it like a scientist examining a specimen. What triggered this response? What information is it providing about the situation? How can this energy be channeled into focused action rather than scattered reaction? The heat of anger, when properly directed, becomes fuel for determination and clarity rather than destructive outburst. When hurt surfaces, that sharp sting of betrayal or disappointment, rather than broadcasting your pain or seeking immediate comfort, you learn to disguise it, containing its power while using that vulnerability as motivation for strategic repositioning. When fear appears, instead of retreating or panicking, you sharpen it into heightened alertness, better preparation, more careful planning. This process of emotional conversion turns what most people experience as weakness into sources of power and insight. The hidden truth behind this transformation is that it leads to a form of freedom that most people never experience in their entire lives. When you stop needing to be liked by everyone, you become immune to social pressure and manipulation tactics that depend on your desire for approval. When you stop fearing loss, whether of relationships, possessions, or status, you become immune to threats that would normally control your behavior. When you stop craving love and validation from external sources, you become immune to betrayal because your emotional stability no longer depends on others' actions. This emotional independence creates a profound shift in how you navigate relationships and make important life decisions. You're no longer making choices from a place of neediness, fear, or desperate desire for acceptance. Instead, you operate from a centered place of self-command where your decisions align with your authentic values and long-term objectives rather than immediate emotional impulses. The most sophisticated manifestation of this psychological mastery reveals itself in what I call the mirror technique, perhaps the most elegant weapon in psychological warfare. When someone is attempting to provoke you, to extract an emotional reaction, to gain insight into your internal landscape, you simply reflect their behavior and emotional state back to them, while revealing absolutely nothing of your own thoughts, feelings, or intentions. This approach works because of a fundamental truth about human psychology. People fear their own reflection more than they fear external threats. When you learn to mirror someone's behavior, energy, and emotional state back to them without showing any of your own cards, you create a deeply uncomfortable psychological experience. They're essentially forced to confront their own patterns, insecurities, and motivations without the comfort of understanding yours. Right, I am becoming the mirror, not the reflection. In the comments, if you're beginning to see how this technique could transform your approach to challenging interactions with manipulative people. Behind the scenes of this mirroring technique lies a deeper principle about information dynamics that Machiavelli grasped with stunning clarity. He recognized that manipulation and control fundamentally thrive on disclosure. Every piece of personal information you reveal, your fears, your desires, your triggers, your insecurities, your goals, becomes potential ammunition that can be used against you later. The most vulnerable person in any interaction is the one who reveals the most about themselves. The transformation this creates in your approach to relationships and strategic interactions is profound. Instead of being an open book that everyone can read and predict, you become what intelligence operatives call a grey man. Someone who operates in the shadows, gathering information while giving away nothing of strategic value. You listen 10 times more than you speak. You observe patterns in others' behavior while keeping your own patterns hidden. You collect data points while maintaining complete operational security around your own plans and vulnerabilities. This shift requires breaking one of the most deeply ingrained habits that society has programmed into most people. The compulsive need to explain and defend yourself. This might be the most difficult transformation you'll undergo because it goes against everything you've been taught about communication and relationships. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Powerful people don't explain themselves or justify their actions to others. Every time you feel compelled to explain your decisions, your behavior, or your choices, you're essentially cracking your own psychological armor. Every defense you offer becomes a surrender of your psychological frame. The moment you start scrambling to justify yourself, you've already lost ground in the invisible war of perception that's constantly happening in human interactions. You've shifted from a position of authority to one of submission, even though it feels like you're just being reasonable or clarifying misunderstandings. Now I want to go even deeper into one of the most sophisticated forms of psychological influence, the art of strategic withholding. Most people assume that control is taken through force, aggression, or direct confrontation, but often the most effective control is maintained through deliberate absence, withholding your attention, your validation, your immediate responses, your emotional energy. The hidden truth about modern psychology is that most people have become addicted to constant feedback and attention. They need immediate responses to text messages, instant likes on social posts, continuous validation of their thoughts and feelings. This addiction creates a vulnerability that you can leverage through strategic withholding. When you deliberately deny them these psychological rewards, when you remove your attention and validation from the equation, they begin to unravel in ways that direct confrontation never could achieve. This approach works because it triggers a primal fear of abandonment and rejection without you having to do anything aggressive or hostile. You simply become less available, less responsive, less emotionally accessible. The discomfort this creates in others often motivates them to change their behavior, to treat you with more respect, to value your time and attention more highly. All of these techniques culminate in what might be the most sophisticated level of psychological influence possible: frame domination. This goes beyond individual tactics and strategies. It's about controlling the entire lens through which others perceive reality itself. Real power doesn't come from winning arguments or proving points. It comes from determining the context within which those arguments and points get evaluated. Type, I control the frame, not just the facts, if you're beginning to grasp how this level of psychological sophistication could transform every interaction you navigate. If you've made it this far in our exploration of psychological mastery and emotional sovereignty, you're already demonstrating something that sets you apart from most people. You've invested your time and attention in concepts that require patience, discipline, and genuine commitment to personal transformation. This isn't content for everyone. It's specifically designed for those who are serious about developing real inner strength and strategic thinking. The principles we've explored together, from cold reaction and strategic silence to frame control and emotional conversion, these aren't just theoretical concepts. They're practical tools that can fundamentally reshape how you navigate relationships, handle conflicts, and move through the world with genuine confidence and composure. If this journey toward emotional independence and psychological strength resonates with where you are in your own development, I'd appreciate you subscribing to the channel. The content here is crafted specifically for people who want to go deeper than surface-level self-improvement and develop the kind of mental discipline that creates lasting change in how others perceive and respond to you. Drop "This message was meant for me" in the comments if you made it through this entire exploration of Machiavellian psychology and strategic emotional control. It helps me understand who's truly committed to this path of development versus those who are just browsing through. If the connection we've built through this conversation feels valuable to you, a like on the video helps ensure more people who could benefit from these insights get the chance to discover them. There's something powerful about finding content that speaks directly to where you are in your personal growth journey. There's a video right here that dives even deeper into the practical application of these psychological principles in everyday situations. Click and continue with me over there, because what we've covered today is just the foundation of what's possible when you truly master the art of strategic thinking and emotional control.